Hello, hi, welcome. My name is Nina Kerkez, and I'm a Director of Consulting in UK and Ireland for LexisNexis Risk Solutions. Today with me, I have Gerard Green, who is the Head of AML in EMEA for Invesco. Gerard has worked many years in the wealth management and funds businesses across UK, Ireland, and Luxembourg. Hi, Gerard, how are you?
Hello, good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us today. So today we're going to talk a little bit about digital onboarding and what that means for wealth management firms. And with that, I wanted to start this conversation by asking you a few questions on your thoughts. So tell me, Gerard, what would you say is driving actually the need for wealth management firms to use technology to change how they onboard or manage customers? Is it customer expectations? Is it market forces, regulatory demands? How do you see this evolving, and why is this happening?
I think this is a very interesting topic and a good question to start with. I think there are a number of drivers in the industry, especially within our industry in wealth management. Many wealth managers have been in existence for a long time, well established, and particularly before COVID, many of us utilized sort of traditional methods of identifying our clients. The industry sector that we're in, traditionally, we don't meet our clients face-to-face, unlike retail banking. A lot of our clients are individuals or private individuals, etc., who fill out an application form and send it in. And we always have traditionally required certified ID because of that lack of face-to-face relationship. So we need something that we could verify when they send in their identification. But I think COVID as we all know, COVID has changed that a lot. We were forced during COVID period, like many other financial institutions, to change the way that we manage our clients. And I think it's really paved the way to accelerate the way for the path for the industry to move towards digitalization. And what the client expectation is very much there now with COVID, but not just because of COVID. It was happening anyway. We know that a lot of retail banks now, you can open an account online with your retail bank. That's normal now. Long gone are the days where you'd walk into a branch to open an account. Fintech companies as well, they use digitalization very, very well. And you can open an account with a fintech company within minutes, simply by taking a selfie and uploading your passport. So the wealth management industry is catching up with this, and it's increasingly seeing a need to use digitalization.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that your clientele is slightly changing. You have kind of younger generation that is taking on and participating in wealth management. That's very much a digitized generation. So perhaps they're also driving a little bit of that change. And so how important do you think is the issue of cost or process efficiency when you're onboarding customers to your business?
It really depends upon your client base. The wealth management industry traditionally or historically attracted many private individuals, as I mentioned earlier, send in their applications and manage their individual accounts directly with the wealth manager. However, that really increases the administrative costs because the wealth manager is having to manage each individual client. They're having to onboard that client. They're having to respond to any questions. They're having to reach out to them when there are changes to the investment strategy, etc. So what we've seen over the years is a lot of the client base merging and the distribution changing more towards a scalable volume form of distributing. So typically, wealth management clients these days can be financial intermediaries. So they typically are financial intermediaries, distributors, private banks, for example, who will invest into the funds on behalf of their underlying clients. This increases the efficiency because we are dealing with one key relationship, the private bank, rather than all the underlying clients. But we still do, at Invesco, we still place a lot of emphasis and importance upon our retail client base that we have, the private individuals who still invest with us. So they're still very important to us. And so it depends whether you're dealing with a retail client these days or a private banker, for example, the financial institution. With the financial institution, it's very important to keep that, for our sales team, to keep that sort of face-to-face relationship, that ongoing, whether it's face-to-face or telephone calls or video calls these days, that's extremely important. The retail clients, like I said, it's less face-to-face. And this is where increasingly the cost and the efficiency comes into question. You know, how do we continue to manage our book of business, these retail clients, but give them the client experience that they expect and that they deserve?
Yeah, absolutely. Makes perfect sense. And so when we've kind of seen some research from E&Y that is showing that a typical firm requires 8 touch points to take kind of the time and cost of onboarding the customer. So when you're onboarding a customer, so your process of KYC and EDD, do you have the analysis of how many touch points? Do you break it down to in order to kind of complete that process?
Yes, absolutely. It's something that we've been looking at internally for the last three years now. If we stick to the current distribution model, which is typical in the industry, which is dealing mainly with financial institutions, your private banks, distributors, etc., and platforms, they are managed by our sales teams. So that's our first touch point. And then our sales team will introduce them internally and say, you know, we've got a new intermediary who'd like to invest into our funds. What do we need from them in terms of AML, KYC to identify them? And so that comes through to our back office and it comes through to the AML team. They then look at who the client is, but they will then go back with some questions. They'll say, okay, what type of investors are they looking to introduce? How are they looking to deal? Are they based only in one country or are they in numerous locations? Are there any other third parties involved? So they always look. AML is never straightforward because you have to understand the whole model and the client and who the involved parties are. So that's a touch point that then goes back to the sales team. Sales team then go back to the client, ask those questions. The client comes back to the sales team. But so you get the picture. It's a lot of. I don't know how many touch points there are, but there's so much back and forth potentially before we at Invesco are able to finally go out to client and say, you know, these are our final requirements. These are not going to change. What we do try to do, and everyone tries to do, we just try to go out to the client once with one set of requirements and say, here's our list, please provide the following documentation. Because the client doesn't want all that back and forth. But unless the back office is talking directly to the client, then you know the sales team, they're not AML experts, so they're not going to know immediately. They're not going to be able to tell the client immediately what's required, and that's why you need to have all these different touch points traditionally. And I keep saying traditionally because the world is changing so quickly with the digitalization, the way of doing business. Digitalization is very different. I mean, it really does minimize the number of touch points, and I guess we'll get into that and further down the line with more questions. But that certainly we're looking at digitalization to decrease the number of touch points.
Yeah, you're absolutely, I couldn't agree more. The world is changing rapidly, but we are still seeing an increased number of regulation. And, it's kind of my perception that the risk-based approach, which is what you were talking about here, kind of understanding the customer fully isn't really going to go away. But hopefully, digitization and technology, rightly so, is going to help us. So what would you say an average kind of onboarding process looks like for you guys from that first touch point with the salesperson up until the customer is fully onboarded? Do you know approximately how long that takes?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there's a wide range. It can take just a few days if we're lucky. Well, if we have a client who is what we would call a low-risk client, so it's a well-known regulated bank in the UK, for example, we can obtain a lot of the KYC or AML through open source, through their website, proof of regulation, etc. And so we don't need to engage with that bank necessarily directly, and we can onboard them very quickly and efficiently. But we have a wide range of clients. They're not all UK banks, for example. So it very much depends on the type of client and where they're located. If you have a sovereign wealth fund in a what we would term as a higher risk region, possibly South America, Middle East, it can take much longer. So it can actually take a few months.
Right.
Quite a number. It can take a number of months to onboard a client. But that's not unusual because typically a client may look to build that relationship with us and learn more about our funds, around our products, risk strategy, etc., before they're actually ready to invest. So it's not always because of the onboarding. The delay is not always good. The onboarding doesn't always cause a delay. It can be other. There can be other aspects to take into consideration as well when the client decides to invest in your funds.
Right. And do you believe that technology has helped kind of speed up that process, or do you think that it's perhaps helped you reduce the cost of customer onboarding?
Technology has already really increased the efficiency and speed within the wealth management business, but I think there's much potential to go further. I think some firms are further along than others. If you talk about, we're talking predominantly about onboarding, but the technology is also around, dealing, trades. When clients are looking, a lot of our clients, they're trading every single day. And if we didn't have sort of automated trade systems and so on, we'd be back to the old days of booking manual trades, paper-based, which just be unheard of nowadays. So I think that's a very good example where technology has helped in the past and continues to. And I think we now need to embrace technology in the onboarding space. We can no longer really expect clients to be sending in certified paper copies upon our first request, or in a low risk scenario. In higher risk scenarios, we may require that simply because they are high risk, and we have to do that, and the regulations require us to do that. So it's understood. Yeah. But if we're looking at a typical customer, technology really does. The technology really can help just speed that up, because as I mentioned before, the back office doesn't meet the client face to face. However, digitalization will allow us to connect directly with the client without having to go back through the touch point through sales. So we can send an email or a link directly out to the client, ask them to click on the link when it's convenient to them. We can potentially identify them using that link, because it takes them to a video link where they can take a photograph of themselves, hold up their passport, and then they can upload the client documentation. that can then flow back through to our back office systems, and we can verify all that documentation. And we know it's come from a reliable source because we know who uploaded it. And that's the real efficiency here of what technology can do nowadays for on clients.
Yeah. And do you think that in that way, kind of understanding your customer better through the process of onboarding can ultimately help you offer better products for your customers at the end of the day? That's kind of my perception, that today we see the onboarding process very burdensome, and for most organizations it's still the kind of KYC AML functions are still cost functions. But if we leverage the data and information that we understand about our customer through that we've gathered about the customer through the onboarding process, then at the end of the day we can offer a better product or service to them.
I think the key to this is that the onboarding is an administrative task, and the relationship with the client is through, like I say, through our sales team, with their sales team or their product team. And they want to focus on their core activity, which is looking at our products, their investment strategy, their performance, and talking to us about that. They don't want to be talking to us around onboarding and AML. That's a regulatory requirement. It's administrative. So I think what the digitalization of onboarding, what it does, it removes that administrative piece from the face-to-face relationship, because our sales teams don't want to be talking to the client saying, oh, by the way, we're still waiting for a copy of your passport, or your passport's expired. Can you send us another copy? So it allows our sales teams and product to focus more on those core activities, as you mentioned.
Right. And so you are mentioning the digitization of the process through emails, through kind of biometrics, perhaps robotic process automation. So how far along do you believe you are actually on the journey at Invesco in terms of utilizing technology to engage and manage customers, and to also manage their portfolio or funds?
So we embarked upon this 3 years ago, and we use it predominantly for our institutional business. So we have clients who come to us and they ask us to develop a portfolio with a risk and investment strategy according to what they need, so to their individual requirements. So these are obviously very important key clients to us. And rather than take them through the old traditional onboarding process, as we would have done in the past, what we've done at Invesco is we've built some internal tools which allow us with APIs that connect our back office tools in the AML team right through to the sales team, who may be locally based with the client wherever it might be. It may be in the Middle East, it could be anywhere in Europe or Asia. So what this does is it allows the sales team to enter the potential client's details into their system, and that flows automatically through to the AML team, and who can then immediately start looking at that client, start gathering all the requirements. And once they have the full facts, they can send that link that I mentioned earlier. They obtain the client email address. They can send that link out with the list of requirements. So that's how far that's how far we've got with our dedicated institutional business. Now, there are other areas of business as well. There's real estate, there's the retail funds, and so on. And I think it's important that wealth managers look at the whole of their client base, but not just internally, but as you're probably aware, many wealth managers outsource the client onboarding to a third-party provider. So I think it's just as important for third-party providers to start looking at, if they're not already, look at the digitalization for onboarding.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that then kind of digitizing that onboarding journey opens up wealth management firms to bigger risks or different types of risks, such as fraud, perhaps?
Yeah, this is a question I often get. But again, I go back to the fact that within the wealth management industry, many of our client relationships are not typically face-to-face. Our sales teams will have direct interaction with our key clients, of course. But otherwise, for onboarding, the AML team doesn't go face-to-face with the client. So I think digitalization actually reduces the risk of fraud within the wealth management industry, because our sales team will establish that first contact with the client. They will obtain their details, they'll obtain their contact details, email address, and so on. So once we use digitalization and we're dealing with that client email, that client contact and their email, we know who we're dealing with. And if a third party attempted any fraud on the account, we'd suddenly be faced with a different email address or different email domain, etc. And often with digitalization, as I mentioned, the systems from back office to front office can be completely interlinked real time. So if we had an attempted fraud and we were to update details, that would flow straight through to the front office to sales. Or we could notify sales. We'd say, oh, we've got a new client contact. Are you aware of that? And so it enables us to work, the back office to work closer with the front office to detect any potential fraud a lot more quickly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what about your customers, actually? So do you think that they have the preference for face-to-face engagement with your organization, or are they okay with this digitization, digital engagement?
So I think, as you mentioned, younger generations, they're more used to digital onboarding, using their phones as an example, and they're absolutely comfortable with that. They don't want to be taking time off to have to go into town, go into
Right.
local office, meet someone face to face simply to open an account. But I think our key relationships, financial institutions, intermediaries, platforms, it's very important that our sales teams keep in regular contact with them. But as I mentioned before, it's more around the investment funds, performance, client experience. I don't believe clients really want to invest time talking about onboarding or spending time on onboarding tasks.
Yeah. And what do you perceive, so some in general kind of wealth management industry and wealth management firms, what do you perceive is kind of holding them back from investing further in digital onboarding capability for their customers?
That's a really good question. I think there needs to be more awareness in the industry of what digitalization can bring. And I think especially within wealth management, as I mentioned at the beginning of our meeting, many of us are well established, founded along many years ago. And until recently, prior to COVID, we were so used to just having clients send in certified documentation. So we've been a bit lazy. Some of us may have been a bit lazy in the past in terms of expecting the client to provide everything. In the past, we didn't see a benefit in doing more ourselves, with the onus being on the client the whole time. Digitalization, enhancing systems, processes, it all requires cost. But I think now more recently, wealth management has looked at other segments of the industry, especially fintech companies, and see how they're doing it and how more efficient it is. And in actual fact has come to realize that digitalization efficiency is cost saving. It's worth the investment in digitalization. But to be very honest with you, I think digitalization is something that many in the industry, wealth management industry, are still grappling with, trying to understand how can they use it and apply it to their model, to their business, and enhance the customer experience.
Yeah, so what do you think with that are actually the risks for firms that are refusing to apply that digital onboarding to their models of operation?
Oh, I think it's an emerging risk which will become more and more apparent. Clients, quite rightly, are now starting to expect us to make the onboarding process quite seamless and digital for them. And so those in the market who still rely upon traditional methods, they will they will start receiving feedback from clients. The clients are very quick to tell us, how quickly our competitors, how quick our competitors are with the onboarding compared to us, for example. So I think, and like I say, it's an administrative task, and it costs them time, and they don't want to do it. So any way we can help to enhance the client experience, build that efficiency, we will continue to work well with our clients. Those who don't do that will, quite honestly, quite bluntly, just get left behind. Because clients will go, the clients will go and invest elsewhere. They'll invest with companies who they see are moving with the times, are providing them with real-time information, digital onboarding, less administration, just make them more attractive, of course.
Yeah, so it's that kind of customer journey and customer experience that is extremely important. And lastly, Gerard, I wanted to ask you, what do you think are the biggest opportunities that technology poses for Invesco for improving or kind of changing the way that you serve your customers today?
Well, I know today we've focused very much on onboarding, and it's still very much a key area that we continue to develop. A lot of the time, concerning AML, these days, it's not just onboarding, but it's also updating client information. We call it ongoing due diligence. So right. From time to time, we have to reach out to clients and ask them for an updated copy of their passport, as an example. So again, technology, the same type of technology can help with that. I think clients, they don't like to receive a lot of letters in the post. And we've seen in other areas like retail banking, a lot of clients have chosen to receive their statements online rather than paper-based. And I think that's the opportunity that we have in the wealth management industry now to move towards that digitalization, make the account statements available online, give clients online access to their accounts so they can view them real time, any time of the day. I think in the days now of where ESG is so important, where we consider, mass mailings that we used to do in the past, a real waste of paper and resources and so on. And basically, technology allows us to move away from that, and it also gives us a lot of scalability. We can reach out to clients at any time. It's a lot more cost effective. We're not having to hire a mailing house, for example, to post out thousands of letters. The systems that we have allow us simply to contact clients at the touch of a button. And then the client experience is they don't have to reply to us immediately. They can click on that link to reply to us whenever it's convenient to them. So it's a lot quicker, it's more efficient, and cost effective.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Gerard, for your time today. This was very insightful and very helpful. I hope that you enjoyed our conversation. And once again, thanks for agreeing to talk to us.
No, thank you very much. Thank you.